Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it is your favorite warlock here, practicing necromancer. And tonight I want to kind of talk to you about defensive sorcery. I've been seeing a lot of egotistical, prideful stances on social media. Some of this has even been approached unto me through acquaintances who have come to me saying, "Have you heard about this? Have you heard about that?" Specifically, what do you suggest on this individual or that individual? And how should I deal with them? Betrayal is in the air. Alignments are being made. Hey, the Black Tower, how you doing? It's good to have you here. So, personally, my stance on this is to stay the hell out of it. It's drama, it's unnecessary drama, and it doesn't involve me. However, it does not mean that just because it doesn't involve me does not mean I'm not prepared in case something comes my way. Okay? So, the best way to do this is to look at the 48 laws of power. And in the 48 laws of power, it says make your intent unknown. Okay? Make your intent unknown. What does this mean? It means that whatever you're doing, make yourself invisible, make yourself scarce, basically. And it literally goes into the 33 strategies of warfare as well, which also states leave your enemies no room to attack. Okay? So by going silent, by going off the grid, so to speak, and not engaging, it leaves your enemies wondering, what are you up to? It leaves them wondering, how do I attack somebody when I have no idea what they're doing? Do I shadow them? Do I set up defensive postures? Do I engage them? You see, they can't attack when they have no idea what you, as a sorcerer, either a warlock or a witch, is able to do. Yeah, you're welcome. And it's good to have you here too. So they have to literally reevaluate everything, every aspect. And it's interesting because if you look at your family knows you best. Therefore, they can hurt you in ways no one else can. Your friends can become envious, they can become jealous, and they can become those who are bought off. Okay, those who can be bought off, paid, even used as spies against you. So by you going under the radar, either through cloaking, by working with the unholy alliance or Trinity for that matter, you are gaining and employing defensive magics because number one, if you're using, say for an example, let's go with hellhounds. Okay, if we're going with hellhounds are known as protectors and guardians. Okay, a lot of people, especially those who believe in the Hollywood propaganda, they believe that these beings are meant to destroy, like in Supernatural. Guess what? Yeah, they can use you as a chew toy. but for the most part, they work for Hades, Hecate. Okay, they're known as the protectors of the grave for a reason. They protect your items. If you have a sanctuary within, say, for an example, a cemetery, as a necromancer, you'd probably be using like, say, a coliseum or a crypt for doing rituals, storing your grimoires, if you will, or perhaps even, a place of worship, okay, communion with the spirits. Either way, it's protected by the Hellhound. Just like Anubis, the Egyptian god of the dead, is the heralder of souls. He is the guardian of the graveyards and the keeper of the grave. Ironic, isn't it? So, a hellhound, it turns out to be your best friend. Okay, he becomes a familiar spirit, or should I say, a part of your legionnaires, if you will. He becomes a tool that you can employ to protect your sacred space. Okay, think of them as agents of death, heralds of death, that their only purpose is to protect and to guard. That's what a hellhound does. It doesn't just follow orders of the gods. Do your own research and you'll see what I mean. Stephen, welcome to the channel. For me, it's actually 9:25 p.m., so it's completely 12 hours difference between us. That's true. And one of the things that I also recommend is that you watch what you say. Sometimes it's best to limit what you say and how you say it because it will protect you in the long run. Wow, yeah, almost 12 hours. So, in the strategies of warfare, we learn the different grounds that we can fight on. Sun Tzu, for an example, said a wise general contemplates, meditates, basically, upon the enemy, getting to know their strategies, their weaknesses, their strengths. How many people are in their legions? Who can you trust and who can you not trust? What should you employ long before you cast that first stone? You see, Marcus Aurelius in his book Meditations, he said something different, but very oddly, about 1,000 years prior. Something that is, how should I say, unique and interesting. And I actually wrote this down because I wanted you to be able to go out and get the book and go to the exact verses. Part IV. To expect bad men not to do wrong is madness. Part 1. How quickly all things disappear. Part 2. Punish only he who has committed the crime. If something is possible for any other man, it is possible for you too. Words are opinions, not fact. Action is the only truth. There is nothing that hinders you from doing what must be done. Part V. The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy. Part VI. Accept the things to which fate binds you. Okay. And that's from the Book of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So when we're looking through history, Abraham Lincoln did a speech where he turned to the Confederate States and referred to them as friends. Now, he was actually chastised by an elderly woman. And he turned to this elderly woman and said, "Do I not defeat my enemy by treating them as a friend?" If we go back to the Young dynasty, this dynasty lasted for 300 years. Now, why is that? Think about this for just a minute. Generation after generation of generals were known since the fall of the Han dynasty of China to rise up and murder the emperors. This was their history. But this one general, this one emperor who used to be a general, after the assassination of his emperor, he literally became the emperor and turned around and assassinated his generals. Down the road, 2 or 3 years later, guess what? The new generals rose up and assassinated this king, this emperor. But then Young came about, this Yang dynasty, this one emperor. And it was interesting because after a festival, he brought his generals close. He brought them close. He told them to stay after everyone else left. And he says, "I want you to stay. I want to talk. Let's have wine. Let's drink." Now, these generals were already drunk. These generals were so drunk, but they were paranoid. They were worried that he was going to assassinate them, like so many others have done. But instead, he diverted their attention. And he says, "If you give up your rank, I will give you states to live with enough finances to live comfortably. You can have anything you want from women to, you know, basically whatever you want for the rest of your lives." And the following day, they come back and they relinquish their titles, and he gives them their property and all the money. He disarmed them. Literally, he disarmed that paranoia. He disarmed that hatred and the plans that they had or could have had. One fell swoop. He let them live. The ironic part is he had an enemy that he was at war with. And after defeating that warrior, that ruler, his ministers and his current generals were trying to tell him, kill them, kill this man, kill his entire family, eliminate them. And you know what was interesting about this history lesson? Is that he basically told his ministers, fuck you. He ignored their advice. And you know what he did? He invited this man into his home and he treated him like a friend, a brother. He pardoned him and sent him with a gift. And what was ironic about that gift, uniquely against that gift, was the fact that it was all the documents that was proving that this man was threatening, was about to eliminate him. Ironic, isn't it? And what was interesting is there's an old proverb which states to take a former enemy and make them a friend. This is because a former enemy has something to prove, and they will be more loyal than an ally. than a friend and a brother. Now, why is that? Because a friend and a brother will turn envious at some point, conspire against you, and wage war, basically. But instead, you have a loyal friend, an ally, and an enemy. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Defensive sorcery is the exact same way. It is the exact same way because by saying nothing, the witch's creed, the very embodiment of what makes up witchcraft, to know, to dare, to will, and to keep silent. Right there, number four, to keep silent. Okay? Why is that such a key role? Let's say, for example, you're planning to do a curse, a hex, a jinx, or some kind of working that will benefit you or a client, like, say, a lust or a compassion rite. Okay? If you reached out and you said, well, I'm going to be doing this tonight. I'm going to do a compassion rite. I'm going to do a lust rite. I'm going to help out a client and do this type of rite for this client. Well, you're opening yourself up to an attack. Your enemy that's hiding in the shadows can come at you. They can come at you and counter that spell. Even if you're doing a curse, painful or wrathful sorcery, you let your enemy know you're going to attack them. Guess what? They have a chance to deflect it. They have a chance to reverse it, and it'll come back on you. I mean, think of all the sorcerers in the past. How many witch wars have been fought? How many? From Edward Edward Arthur White all the way up to Crowley. Hell, even social media today. How many drama fests do you see? How many of these so-called practitioners are attacking each other for shits and giggles just because somebody says no, just because they can? Think about that for just a minute. And since the Black Tower here has just brought up a unique stature, and I'm going to bring this into this because of the fact that it's right on cue, by the way. A very ancient technique used was the conquering kingdom destroying the temples of the gods of the kingdom they were attacking, because if you take away their gods, they're easier to control. Well, let's look at this one perspective. Back during the Roman Empire, when they were conquering the world, they ended up waging war against the Welsh. Basically, it was a big land because of the fact that it wasn't just the Welsh, it was also the Irish. You're looking at Scandinavian, you're looking at Germanic, you're looking at Swedish, you're looking at, like I said, the Welsh and European based cultures. Okay? This is all Gaelic territory, ancient Gaelic territory, which was Druidism at the time. They could not defeat the people during a 100-year crusade to attack these people and annihilate them. So, what did they do? Each time they defeated a rebel army, another one took its place. In a sense, this would be classified as chaos theory. But here it is. This general decided to employ its main force towards these legions of these Gaelic warriors, these Nordic warriors who were renowned for defending their territory in the name of the Druids with such ferocity that it made the Roman Empire stop dead. They could not advance. They couldn't defeat these people. They just could not do it. Didn't matter how many of them they slaughtered. So this one imperator sent a legion west, and he killed the Druids while he engaged these people, this army. That is how they defeated the Gaelics. But then we go into Slavic witchcraft, paganism. We see a different strategy here. In this strategy, we see where they went in and went after the hearts and minds. The hearts and minds of the people. Today, since the 6th century BC, we see where the Slavic people, the Russian people, are divided, but they get along. Half the culture is Catholic, Christian. The other half is pagan, or I should say neo pagan. Old school practices. And it's interesting to see this because you don't always get to see how a conquering nation goes in if you don't know where to look. In fact, look at how the Christians moved. Look at the Vatican and how they moved throughout history. From, say, the Shem priesthood, how they were condemned, run out of town for being priests. They worked with the Egyptian Book of the Dead and funerary rites. Okay? We go further in time and we see the Hashishin, highly skilled warriors, assassins, who are also priesthood. They were wiped out by the Huns. The Huns, just like the Dark Had, that was run by Genghis Khan. Ironic, isn't it? Two cultures, two types of religions or philosophies wiped out by the Huns. No one else, not even their own people, could wipe them out. And you consider the Darkhead, they were a group of shamans. They were known as the Dark Shamans. They fought against the Yellow Shamans, and it was amazing to see that not even the Yellow Shamans could defeat them, but yet the Huns did. Go into demonolatry, and you see Moloch, who was the god of death. Basically, it was a big iron cauldron that you put corpses into. About 200 years, 300 years in the future, he became known as the Prince of the Valley of Tears, associated with child sacrificing after Christians took over and started spreading rumors. Look at Baal, Canaanite, used to be Chaldean, okay, modern day Beirut, Lebanon. Look at the Druids that set up on a main ley line from Beirut, Lebanon, straight through Stonehenge in England, all the way into Stonehenge, right in New Hampshire, here in the US. Now, remind me, how did they get wiped out? Right, the opposing force. But yet, they don't teach this stuff in schools. They don't teach this stuff in covens. You see, a serious adept that wants to learn defensive magics are going to learn history. There's an old proverb which states, "A man who does not learn from history is doomed to repeat it." Look at the world. How many times do governments, regimes say they're going to change something and never do? It is the same old lie. Sleight of hand trick. You see, I was talking with my son's grandfather on this, on voting, just the other day, and it was interesting because he says, "Are you going to vote?" I said, "No." He says, "Why not?" And I told him. I said, "I learned this lesson first time I went to vote." The guy answered way too quick, which told me point blank he was not going to do what he said he's going to do. Sure enough, within a couple of years, he was trying to put in 16 tennis courts in an area that only had 4 players. Yeah, that came back to bite him in the ass. And it's interesting to see all this. So defensive magic is employed in secret. You have to learn timing, the art of timing. You have to learn when is the best day to do what type of sorcery and never discuss it until it comes to fruition. After you've done the right, after you've done the work, only then should you ever open up about it. Not before, and definitely not during. Definitely not during. Because if you do, you're giving enemies and anyone else a reason to attack you. You're opening yourself up to weakness. Never outshine the master. Now, who's the master of your domain but you? Win through action, not through arguing. 48 laws of power. Best stuff you can ever employ. Alistair Knott, a spokesman for theistic Satanism for 35 years, or I should say 35 plus years now, has a book called The Art of Cognitive Warfare, which is basically an offshoot of the Art of War by Sun Tzu. Both of these great authors, these great men, have employed different ways. Whereas Sun Tzu was a master strategist, specifically that of warfare in Asia, basically China. Alistair Knott was a warrior right here as a theistic Satanist. And he said, and I quote, "We live in a time where the pen is mightier than the sword." Now think about this. EA quitting. It's no big it's no big, news that I'm not a big fan. But I'm using this as an example. If you don't watch your territory, if you do not defend your territory with a ferocity and protect your people, your flock, if you will, then you're doomed to have your entire region destroyed, all your work destroyed. It only takes one act of aggression to do so. The article put forth by the BBC News, that's what led to Bog's downfall. It also led to the implosion of its original members, who literally not only separated after fighting amongst themselves, but drew that proverbial line in the sand and started attacking each other. And now here we are after that aftermath, and we're watching him start from scratch, but with a new crew, younger crew. Ironic, isn't it? A prime example right there. A prime example of not watching your six. And yes, that's military term. The military term of watching your six is so that you don't get flanked while you're moving forward. If you're moving into a house, what is the one thing you do? You look around, right? Room to room, floor by floor, and you clear it. Is this the place for me? Is this the place for my family? How well can it be fortified? Think about that. Just think about that for a moment. So, in essence, all these authors, all these great men are telling you defensive sorcery is something that is needed. It's not just offensive, but it's defensive as well. Every aspect of sorcery has a balance and a counterpart. If we look at some historical aspects, let's look at hermeneutics. Let's look at the karma aspect. There was a young prince whose kingdom was conquered. The new king, the new emperor, was jealous of this young prince. The reason for that is because the prince was favored by the people. The former prince was favored by the people. But he was young, he was naive, and he was arrested. He was arrested by the guards on orders of the new king, the new emperor. And a few months later, the young prince's body was found floating in the river. Now, what can we learn from this aspect? Number one, he favored his image over his entire country. That was the first mistake. The second mistake this young prince did was outshine the new emperor. You see, this new emperor pardoned him, granted him mercy, and allowed him to outlive, to live his life. But he made mistake, the fatal mistake of outshining the new master. And that is what got him arrested. That is what got him killed. Jealousy and envy. Okay? And it's interesting because it goes along with these other stories. I mean, even Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius was one of those politicians that was highly educated. He was highly educated, and at the time, he was far more advanced than most politicians, especially of his era, because it didn't matter to him who was in charge. It was more about education and enlightenment. He could play the game better than most. Even Theodore Roosevelt, for an example, imagined an unknown government. Basically, when he was running for presidency, his war was against his own government, this government of the United States of America. And it was a threat from within that he was fighting against. And it was ironic because by doing so, he motivated himself. He motivated his party. And he trusted each one to fulfill their roles. He didn't overshadow them. He basically gave the order to his lieutenants. And his lieutenants, each one, went to their underlings and carried out those orders in their own unique way. Every single one out of that one order, that one command. And it made it much more proficient. You see, going from offensive to defensive is not always a bad thing. It just means that you have to be cautious. Think of the term prudence, for an example. Going in slow rather than blindly. Learning about your opponents rather than attacking without information. In magic and witchcraft, it is the exact same thing. It is the exact same thing. Doing a spell of protection can be considered personalized. Black magic is viewed as personal gain, not just something that is considered to be vile magic, but personal gain. By placing seals of protection, cloaking your activities, that's benefiting you. It's defensive. It's saying, okay, I'm not being attacked, but I want to be prepared. I want to be prepared for anything that is coming my way. One of the greatest defensive tools that I ever found to this date, well, I wouldn't say it's one of the best because I've learned quite a bit since I came across this, especially when I became a necromancer. But I believe it was Jason, what was it? Jason Miller, I believe, that works with Hecate. And he did a rite involving the Wheel of Hecate. He brought in the Fates, the Furies, and one other group, a heavy hitting group. And I can't, the Gorgons. Okay, the Gorgons, the Fates and the Furies. And this is like a witch's shield, if you will. And the wheel itself is a great protection, especially when you've done this incantation. And I tried this for myself, but I also used it on a couple of clients and a good friend of mine that I used to be friends with. He was a good friend until he married a Baptist woman. After that, so we kind of fell apart after they moved. But you see the point. He was having some issues from a scam artist that claimed to be from a legal perspective, a cop from out of state. And what was ironic about this is that as soon as I charged this, as soon as I gave it to him and I told him to put it in his wallet and to carry it with him at all times, okay, he had no more issues. That instance just fell away. He had no more issues, no more no more attacks. And it's ironic how you can employ anything from a seal to say the nine kings of the Goetia. Okay. The nine kings of the Goetia is perhaps one of the greatest heavy hitters out there for spirits. And this is why. You can use Asmodeus for your desire. He is the demon, a jinn of desire and wrath. You can use Belith for invisibility. Boon, which is another spirit that is not associated with the nine kings, but you add him in with, say, for an example, Viney, who is a part of it. You got protection in finances, protecting your interests. You can go into Paimon, who persuades men's minds. Belial, that bestows titles of importance. Ironic, isn't it? Just by using spirits, you're persuading men's minds. You're gaining favor from your enemies, from your allies, and the world. Those are the world. Why? Because these doors are being opened for you. And as you've seen in this video alone, how the 48 laws, the 33 strategies of warfare, the art of war, the witch's creed, and that of meditations comes into play. There's many, many different avenues to defensive magic, defensive sorcery. You can use it for personal gain within your daily lives, from work. You can do it from, say, for an example, legal systems. You can do it from various different needs. But it comes down to you and what you're looking to do. That's the only thing. Nobody can tell you how your sorcery should work. No one can tell you what to do. That choice is yours and yours alone. That's why it's called dark magic. That's why it's called black magic. Because it is about you. There is no good and there is no evil magic. There's no white light or black magic. Magic is magic, and that's the one thing you need to know. It comes down to your intent. And that's what a lot of people will not tell you when doing any form of sorcery. It comes down to your intent and how you wield it. You have the tools, you have the means, and you have the motivation. Now it comes down to you. What are you willing to do? How far are you willing to take it? Education is key. Knowing your craft, daring to research it, willing to research it, to experiment with it, and to perform these rites in secret. Only then can you go forth. Only then can you go forth with that honor, that integrity, and perform that rituals for others. I want to thank Stephen for jumping on here with me. Draco Starseed, welcome to the channel. Thank you for being here. And the Black Tower as well. But remember this, whatever you preach, always back it up with numerous sources. And always make yourself available to the public. You are responsible for the things you say and do. Okay? And most importantly, don't argue with people. Just just smile and walk away. Because you know where you're going to be standing in just a few short hours. In front of that altar. In front of those gods. In front of all those herbs and all those seals. There are different ways to do things. And you got to discern what, when, and how you're going to deploy it. What is needed and for what situation. Now, you can't plan for everything because there's always going to be things that you cannot plan upon. But you can put up a lot, even if it's not everything. Precisely, knock the dust from your feet. Personally, I like the saying, if you're not kicking up dust, you're not doing it right. You're not doing your job right if you're not kicking up dust. So, like I said, walk away from that drama, win through action, not through argument. That's the best advice right there. But also, make sure to leave your enemies without any way to attack you. Make yourself unpredictable. Remove yourself from the equation and it will leave them dumbfounded. They will try to, how should I say this? Ironically, I've had this happen. They will try to test the water, so to speak, and I don't reply because to ignore them is the ultimate kick in the balls. It is literally the ultimate death sentence because they're not being acknowledged. They're not being fed. They're not getting what they seek, which is attention. Because I've removed myself from the equation. I've removed myself from the drama. And it has left them standing there holding their smoking remainder. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the greatest weapons you have for defensive means. Don't engage. Be smart. You want to succeed in any form of sorcery? Strong foundation is key. Because only with that strong foundation can you grow. There's an old proverb which states, and this is the last thing I'm going to leave you here with, is the la- the strong root of a tree produces great fruit. When you have that strong base, the tree will grow strong. Without it, you might as well be trying to plant in an ocean. It'll just fall over, crumble like a rock slide or a mudslide. All right? So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Defensive sorcery. Have a good night or a good day. Until next time, I'm out, and I want to thank everybody for joining in with me. It's an honor having you here. If you like what you see, hit that notification button. If you want to follow and subscribe, that's on you. I appreciate it, and have a good night.